The dragon was dying, and Thomas didn't care that it was trying to kill him. Its wing hung at an impossible angle, the membrane torn and bleeding silver liquid that steamed when it hit the ground. The creature was no bigger than a horse, a juvenile, Thomas guessed, with scales the color of burnished copper. It snapped at him weakly, more from instinct than actual aggression, as he approached. "Easy, girl," he whispered, though he had no idea if the dragon understood human speech. He had no idea if it was even female. He just knew that the consortium soldiers would be here within hours, and they'd execute anything with wings and fire. The dragon's amber eyes tracked him as he moved closer. Pain radiated from the creature in waves. He could see it in the rigid curve of her spine, the rapid heaving of her chest. A poacher's snare had caught her wing. The wound was at least 3 days old, already infected. Thomas had been a veterinarian before the war, before humanity had discovered dragons and decided they were either property to be studied or threats to be exterminated. He'd chosen a third path, keeping one alive. He didn't think. He simply wrapped her wound with strips from his shirt, fashioned a sling from his jacket, and started walking deeper into the blackwood forest. The dragon was too weak to resist, and after the first mile, she stopped trying. Miles blurred together. His legs screamed. His shoulder burned from bearing her weight, her scales sharp against his bare skin. Twice he stumbled into creeks and nearly drowned them both. Once he heard consortium helicopters overhead and lay in the mud, shielding her body with his own, praying. By the 5th mile, Thomas was running on nothing but stubbornness. By the 8th, he wasn't sure if he was still walking or hallucinating. The trees became walls. The sky turned purple. The dragon's breathing grew shallow. He found the cave by accident, a deep fissure in the mountainside, hidden behind a waterfall. Thomas half carried, half dragged the dragon inside, laid her on the smoothest stone he could find, and collapsed beside her. He didn't remember falling asleep. He woke to the sound of breathing, not the labored breathing of an injured animal. Multiple breaths, deep, resonant, synchronized. Thomas's eyes snapped open and his blood turned to ice. He was surrounded. Adult dragons formed a semicircle around him, their scales gleaming jewel tones in the filtered sunlight. Emerald, sapphire, gold. 4 of them, each larger than the one he'd saved, each capable of incinerating him with a thought. Thomas's hand instinctively moved to the knife at his belt before he stopped himself. That would be suicide. He forced his fingers to stay still and waited for the fire. One of the emerald dragons lowered its massive head. Thomas could see his own reflection in its eye, small, desperate, utterly at its mercy. He held his breath. The dragon exhaled, and warm air washed over him, carrying the scent of sulfur and something strangely gentle. It turned its head toward the injured copper dragon, who was stirring slightly, her breathing stronger than it had been. The message was unmistakable. "You saved one of ours." Thomas's vision blurred. "She was dying," he said, his voice hoarse. "I couldn't just leave her." The sapphire dragon made a sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a purr. Something that might have been laughter, or approval, or both. For 3 days, Thomas remained in that cave while the dragons came and went. They brought him water in the hollow of their talons. Once, the gold dragon dropped a deer at his feet. Not an attack, a gift, sustenance. The injured copper dragon healed under the care of her pack, and Thomas watched her strength return with each passing hour. On the 4th morning, the sapphire dragon lowered herself beside him, offering her back. An invitation. Thomas understood. The war was still happening in the world beyond the mountains. The consortium was still hunting, but the dragons were making a choice, the same choice he'd made in that forest. They were choosing kindness when the world demanded cruelty. Thomas climbed onto the dragon's back, his hand resting on her warm scales. As she spread her wings and launched toward the sky, he looked down at the forest below, vast, ancient, filled with secrets humanity had forgotten how to see. Behind them, the copper dragon flew alongside, her wings still healing but strong enough. She chirped, a sound like bells, as they rose above the clouds. Thomas smiled. Sometimes saving one life saved everything.